is, I love it when we share ideas at the end. And thank you. Oh, someone sent me a private message. I am recording this. It will be on YouTube. So let me kind of get that out there too before I get started. We have a Music for All Color Guard YouTube channel. It is brand new. We are using it to upload some content this summer, and all of our Zoom sessions that work recording, because I've lost parts of some for some reason, we are going to put it all on the YouTube channel. So if you search Music for All Color Guard, that's the name of our channel. It's not MFA, it's spelled out Music for All Color Guard, and subscribe to that channel. I started a playlist for all of the 2020 virtual summer symposium content. So that's where you will find everything. Okay, so that's where this will be going. And thank you for the reminder, because I forgot to start recording. So now we are recording. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here because I do have a little PowerPoint that will help guide me, because sometimes I like to ramble. I do. I get off topic quite often. All right, let me scooch this down. And no, Susie, oh my God, this is when my daughter is like, Mom, what are you doing? There we go. All right, so let's get at it. Building better performers. So here are some things to keep in mind as I'm talking. Number one, I do not have any magical answers. Developing great performance is a process. It takes time. There is no magic potion. There's no magic phrase. It is a process that you have to start and be consistent with, and be willing for it to take a couple of years. I'm sure you all have experience with kids and people in your guard that refuse to perform. I was one of them. And I refused to perform, number one, because I wasn't comfortable. But number two, I didn't know how. I just got yelled at, perform, perform. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, my chin is up. I'm looking at the audience. What do you want? And to me, it was all about spinning and dancing and being accurate and clean. And I didn't quite understand the piece about performing and how you communicate with an audience, you know. So it does take time. My second bullet here, performance instruction should begin right away in your season. So with that, I just say, do not wait until the week before the first show to start telling your kids to smile or look up. It has to be a part of everything. Every technique block you run, every dance class, every time you're teaching choreography, yes, even then, you want to remind your students that they need to be performing at all times. It needs to be a part of everything you do. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit. So here's this third bullet. I already mentioned this. Most students don't know what it means to perform. So we have to be intentional about teaching them how to do it. Okay, there are natural born performers. I think you guys have probably all had them in your group. You don't have to tell them anything. They're just like sparkle and shining. I interviewed Omari Simmons today on Instagram, and when I asked him, you know, how did you become such a great performer? He was able to answer, but really bottom line was he's just natural at it. So those kids that aren't naturals, we've got to be intentional and guide them on their journey. And then this is a little confusing, so I'll explain it. The level of the ensemble and the venue for the performance should guide the depth of content. And what I mean by that is there are multiple levels of performing, so many different emotions that we ask our kids to portray. Smiling is the easiest. Right? That's the one we all start with. Smile, smile, smile. It's the easiest thing to put on your face. Most kids understand the emotion of happy, right? But then you all have seen those Winter Guard shows or those drum corps shows where there's like deep emotions, you know, like yearning and, you know, those more deeper things. And you can't expect young guards that aren't comfortable with performing to do those deeper things. Okay, so the level of the ensemble, meaning if you have performers who are younger, who aren't as experienced, who don't really know how to perform yet, you don't want to try to give them the task of performing some deep emotion. And then the venue is another thing. You know, marching bands, you're out on this football field. It's a little bit harder to convey those deeper emotions. The marching band field is much easier for happy or angry or intense, you know, those bigger emotions. When you're in Winter Guard and you're in a more intimate space, it's a little bit easier to do those or to communicate those kind of more subtle emotions. Okay. Oops. Okay, so I mentioned that you want to start your performing instruction right away. Okay, and that starts in your technique block, day one, when they're standing there with their flags ready to do drop spins or carvings. And, you know, chins up, that's part of the posture. So when you are addressing posture and how they stand, make sure you address what the head is doing. And that looking down or even looking straight forward is really not an option. You need to think about performing and getting your eyes up. Okay. So if they're like, I don't know, what do you mean perform? Well, number one, you can't look at the ground. You can't communicate emotions when you're looking down at the ground. And it's not just your eyes that are looking up. The audience can't really see this. It's got to be the whole thing. All right, so starting basic with the chins and eyes up, making eye contact with someone in the audience or a bleacher, and then the easy smile. Okay, putting a smile on your face is easy, but it engages muscles. So if you don't let them do anything, they're going to start training with a face that's doing nothing, you know, the RBF face. So if you start having them doing technique with a smile, or even just, you know, pulling up the corners of your mouth so you're putting an expression on your face, it starts day one. Giving comments and corrections about it just as you would with the technique. So you're done doing your drop spins and you're like, you're grabbing too early and you're not spinning in the flat plane. And Caroline, you were looking at the floor the whole time, right? That's not good performing quality. So make sure you're performing as well, you know, or pointing out the good people. Hey, watch Hannah spin. Notice how her chin is lifted the whole time while she's doing her drop spins. You know, so talking about giving comments and corrections about performance qualities, just like technique things. I love across the floors for practicing performance qualities because you're actually moving. It's, you know, standing in a block is one thing, but when you're moving across the floor in dance class or even on the move with your equipment, that's much more realistic application. And so a lot of times when we do across the floors, the kids are focusing straight forward, you know, doing their little chassés across the floor. But if you add that extra piece of performance quality, you could say, hey, this time when we do our chassés, I want you to turn your head towards me, towards the audience, and I want you to smile as you do each chassé across the floor. So adding those elements of performance to across the floors is another great time to practice them. And then as technique becomes more comfortable, talking about equipment technique, the performance qualities become more coordinated with the show theme. And here's what I mean by that. So at the beginning of band camp, you're just trying to teach them how to do drop spins. And you're like, just keep your chins up and smile. But then your show might be an angry show, right? And so then you can start saying, you know, a couple of months into it, when they know how to do drop spins and it's more of a workout, you know, and timing, whatever, you can add that next layer. Hey, you know, remember part 3 in our show, we're really angry. So when we do our drop spins this week, we're going to practice that angry look on our faces so that you're doing the performance expression and communicating during your technique, and you can attach it to your show theme. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment and just see if we have any questions so far. And if you have questions, it works best if you just type it in the chat box so that we're not talking all over each other, if anyone has any. I'll give it a second. Drink my healthy Diet Coke. All right. Well, if you have one, type it in and I will check back and get back to you. Okay, what? Like, I don't want this down there. Go, can you guys see my screen? Oh my goodness. Oh, now you're on the side. So crazy. Okay. So finding examples of great performance, performers. Okay. So sometimes when you say to a kid perform and I don't know what it means. Well, if you show them an example or a model, that gives them something to strive for so they can see what you're talking about. So the first bullet I had here is the one that says from within the guard. So if you have strong performers in your color guard, you could use them as an example, but I wrote be careful here because, hold on, let me see if someone wants to get in. Yep. If you don't have the culture within your color guard that's okay with making examples of other kids, this could be damaging. So what I mean by that is if you're like, hey, everybody watch Jason, he's such a great performer in this part. Look at how he smiles and lifts up his chin. And if you have that kind of culture in your guard where everybody's like, yeah, good job, Jason, that's awesome. That's great. But if you have the culture that's like, why didn't she pick me? You know? And so if you don't already have that in place, I would recommend maybe not using this one, or maybe just starting to develop it, like walking them through it. Hey guys, I would love to look for someone who's doing a great job performing having their chin up, using their angry face during drop-ins. I would love to find someone who's doing that. And when, you know, and then when you find them, say, we are all going to clap and applaud. You know, you have to kind of like give them instructions on how to be proud of each other for doing the right things. Because I know how teenagers are. Sometimes they're just like, why didn't she pick me? Or, yeah, well, he dropped his toss like 2 sets ago, but yay, he's performing. You know how kids are. So just be careful with that one. This is a good one. The videos and pictures online. I mean, like this little guy in my slideshow. I mean, there's action shots are everywhere now. So there's always wonderful things that you could even just pull up. Or if you have a social media group with your color guard, like if you have a Facebook page, and then you could do like your Friday evening performer picture, and every Friday you post a picture of a great performer you just found online, and then maybe have the kids comment it. What do you see that they're doing that makes them look like they're having a great time, that makes them look like they're communicating? You know, like this guy, his chin is up, he's got a very fun expression on his mouth, you know, his shoulders down so we see his whole neck. You know, that's another thing about performing. So those are great. And then videos and pictures of the students themselves. So bring that camera to rehearsal, and instead of always doing the high cam and showing how clean the flags are or how dirty the flags are, get up close and do close-up runs. And then again, being careful about culture. If you have like a Facebook group with your kids and you post the up close videos just so they can see what they look like. I mean, sometimes you don't really know what you look like until you see yourself on video or pictures. You might think you're performing great, and then you're like, oh my gosh, half the time I was not even smiling. Do you know what I mean? So that awareness of themselves. And then I love this one, that examples from other genres, like color guard is not the only thing that performs. Like there's dance and theater, and even in WGI percussion, like those guys know how to perform, and gals. So you could just, from other genres, WGI wins, there's lots of great pictures and videos of groups that are performing at a high level. Okay, before I begin the facial run through, Theo's like, okay, I'm stepping out. I've done this so many times. Any questions so far? I've just been rambling. Thoughts you have about using technique time or across the floors? And I'll say, if you guys want to unmute yourself, it's too much to type, feel free to unmute and ask away or share away. And at the end, I need you guys to share, so be ready.
Susie, I have a thing.
Absolutely.
I can share.
Sure.
In this past year, I tried to allow my kids to, or me as a director, I guess focus on performance and not the actual achievement of said skill, because a lot of performers choose to, in their mind, say, I can't perform because I don't want to drop, or I don't want to miss my dot, or I don't want to be late. And they focus so much in the hands that they lose the other part, and this whole energy thing. And so I will secretly go tell like a really good performer, hey, I'm going to call you this rehearsal and you're going to drop this toss every single time, but I need you to perform it each time. And I'll say, all right, guys, let's watch Chelsea do this toss. And she'll drop it, and I'll say, well, what's good about Chelsea's toss? And they're like, she looked confident when she let go, but she didn't catch it. I'm like, what else? And I try to lead them to think she performed every rep of that, regardless of her achievement. She still looked great. And achievement will come, of course, but like what is consistent is that she is consistently performing, because they're so quick to see the negative, like, oh, she didn't catch it, so it's not good. When in reality, she performed the crap out of it every single time, whatever phrase we're doing. And then they're like, oh, okay, you know, it's like, and it goes back to the whole recoveries on the sheets kind of thing. And like, you know, you can't be a bad spinner and a bad performer, you know, choose a, you know, a road. And so I was like, maybe she's a bad spinner, but guess what? I give her like little side claps because she at least performed for me, and I like it. And so that kind of changes the brain focus of like, I have to catch, I have to perform, I have to be great, to I can do both, and it's okay if I mess up a little bit, as long as I keep pushing in this other form. And it kind of just allows them to go from like a heavy achievement side, and I'll get this later, to a more balanced like achievement side. Of course, we want to be up here, but you know, it doesn't always work that way. That's what I was going to share.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. That's great. Joy asked if there's another emotion besides smiling that's easier for beginners. To me, it's the opposite end of the spectrum. Like smiling easy and angry is easy. right? Like either your eyebrows are like this and you're up, like everything's up, or everything's squashed down. Like those are the two easiest ones. And really, Joy, if you're starting fresh, brand new, I would start with just getting their chins and their eyes up. You know, like maybe not even thinking about what the rest of this is doing. As long as this and this is happening, that's a great start. And then you could go for the smiles or the anger. You know, that would be the next step. Let me jump down here. McDonald, I'll come to you in a second. Bailey said, is there specific ways to differentiate happy emotion in technique and performance settings? And when we get to the facial run through and developing facial vocabulary, I'll talk about that. And the static smile, like as annoying as it is for those of us that know what real performing looks like, because in the end, right, the end goal is that they don't have to think about, oh, I'm smiling, oh, I'm frowning. It's just they're feeling the emotion and they're just doing it. You know what I mean? That's the end goal. But if you're trying to start from scratch, you know, the plastered smile is better than nothing, right? But we'll talk about developing kind of facial vocabulary and how happy doesn't have to just be a stale smile. All right. Do you want to share what you did for Across the Floors that you tried last fall? You want to unmute yourself? W. McDonald. Who is W? Did they run away? Okay, last call, because I'm curious. I have something I did for Across the Floors for emotions that I tried new last fall. No? All right, we'll just have to remain curious for now. All right, let me go back. We're going to talk about the facial run through, which is a tool that I did not make it up myself. I kind of developed it over the years. Lord. And this is what I say about the facial run through, and I'll explain exactly how it works. You have to start somewhere, okay? And this, I'm talking about like my kids don't perform, I don't know what to do. This is what we implemented at Avon way back in the early 90s when the program kind of started taking off, and we recognized that our kids did not know how to perform. Okay, now we don't do this anymore at Avon because we've developed a culture of performing, and so we left this, but this is where we started, and I use it with my cadet guard as a starting place. Okay, you have to be intentional and clear. I can't say that enough. Just screaming at kids, perform, perform, smile, without helping them understand what they're doing, it's not enough. And then, like I said, this is a building step. You may not need to continue it once the culture of performing and communicating is established and maintained by the students. So once you've developed that, where everybody performs, because that's just what you do, you won't need to do this step. Okay, so here is the basis of what a facial run through is. I'm gonna slide you guys over here. Okay, whatever. All right, number one, you are going to listen to your show music or an excerpt if your show changes. Okay, so if your marching band show has 4 movements and every movement is a different emotion, you're going to focus on one movement at a time. Once you play the music, you're going to list words and phrases that come to mind from the kids. So you say, okay, when you heard that music, what do you think about? What feelings do you feel? What do you picture in your mind? And you're going to write them out on a board or on chart paper or list them out on a computer. Okay. Then you will choose the 3 or 4 words or phrases that best reflects the theme of that song or that the marching band wants to communicate. Okay. So like you're going to take their list and say, okay, this is what we want to communicate to the audience. We want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. Of course, after speaking to the band director and the show creators and knowing exactly what it's supposed to be. Okay, so for example, if you listen to music and some kids said, well, that sounds scary. And some kids said, well, that sounds intense. And one kid said, that sounds like you're going off to a battle. Well, which one of those is it? Like we can hear music and we can all interpret it differently. So if you're like, oh, no, this is definitely battle, like our show is about going off to battle. So we're going to be aggressive and we're going to be storming and we're going to be going into battle. That's the emotion that we're trying to communicate. So that this discussion with your kids is a great door to open to help them understand what the show is about and what they're supposed to be communicating. Okay. Then you're going to choose one of those words and ask the students how they would communicate this word with their face and their body. So if we have the word battle, how would you communicate the word battle with your face? And then you allow the students to share examples, right? Like, oh, well, I could make my hands into fists and get my shoulders kind of up like this. Okay, well, let's all try that. Everyone squeeze your hands together and lift your shoulders up. Right, great. Hey, what's my face doing when I do that? Oh, well, my eyebrows go down and I kind of make like a snarl with my teeth. And okay, let's all try that. Push your eyebrows down, make your teeth snarl. And so you're kind of playing with different things that you could do to communicate that emotion or that feeling or that word that you're trying to communicate. And then I put this disclaimer: if no one is participating, which could happen, especially if you're just starting out, you would need to maybe start the process. Okay, nobody has any ideas. Well, when I go to battle, this is what I would do. Or when I hear the word battle, this is what I do with my face. Try it. And I will tell you, does everybody buy into this right away? No. Do all the students take it seriously right away? No. Does that mean you give up? No. You just got to keep pushing. Okay. Gather, number 5, several examples of facials that you can do for each word. Faces should not be glued into one position. So that's what we're talking about with the smiles, right? If the word that you had is joyful, what do you do when you're joyful? Well, I smile. Okay, what else? Like when you're happy, you just walk around like this, right? Well, no, sometimes I'll take a big breath, like, oh, I'm walking into Disney World after not being there for 5 months. I'm like, big breath and exhale, right? Okay, well, let's all do that. Breathe. Yes, when you're happy, you don't just hold your breath and smile, right? What other faces could you do? Like, wow, oh, I'm so happy. Or just a smirk, right? A pleasant smirk. The pleasant smirk is a great one because it still shows that you're happy and joyful, but it's not as static as a smile. And so you can go back and forth between a smile and a smirk. And take a breath and smile and smirk, right? So you have several things that you can do with your face so you're not just stuck in one static position. Okay, so that's developing the facial vocabulary. Have the students sit in a circle with their backs to each other. And the reason I have them do this first is so that they're not looking at each other. Because you know what happens when a bunch of teenagers are looking at each other, making faces to music? It just ends in everyone laughing and no one taking seriously. So if their backs are to each other, they really can't see anybody. And if I were you, I would even stand in the middle so you don't even see them. And I know you can't hold them accountable and you don't know if they're really doing what you're asking, but you are creating a safe environment for them to try to do this face thing that might be uncomfortable. Play the music again and have them try the faces while the music is playing. So here's your marching band music and it's really intense battle music and they're just sitting on the floor and they're going like battle faces, right? It's weird. It's awkward. It is. If they have choreography, even better. You know how when you play songs for your kids and they don't have any equipment, they're just sitting here and they do all their like air choreography, right? That's even better because then they can start finding those moments when they can like change their face. Then as they get comfortable, so after you try that once and then you guys be done. Like facial run-throughs should not take your whole rehearsal. Like this, you could do brainstorming words one day and the beginning of the next rehearsal, pull out the word you want and like try some faces the next day. The next day you put them back to back and try those. You don't have to do all this in a row. They will get tired of it. But once they've done maybe to their backs to each other a couple times, then flip them so that they're facing into each other. Or I had someone suggest having them sit in front of mirrors. So they're looking at themselves, which is super awkward also. And then once they're faced in towards each other, then you'll get the giggles, but you keep pushing. Let's try it again. Let's try to do a little more serious this time, but encourage them to use each other to motivate stronger performances. And what I mean by this is if you've ever performed in color guard, you know those moments where you're running by your friend on the field and like that energy, like when you make eye contact with them, like, oh yeah, like you build up that energy and great performance moments come from each other on the field, And so if I'm at a battle and I'm facing my friend across the circle and I'm listening to this really intense battle music and I might look at my friend and be like, and then she'll do it back to me. And then I might look at someone else and be like, yeah, come on, let's go to war. So using each other to create those emotions and performances can help as well. Okay, so once you get through all that weirdness, we're not going to try it today. Oh, I'll get back to that. Let me get back to this. Oh, sorry, Whitney. People are joining and I didn't see. That's a process, what I just said. Like, it all sounded like a nice, neat little activity, but it does take time. And like I said, it takes time for them to take it seriously. I would not start that process until the show is like starting to be on the field. They're starting to learn their choreography. You probably don't want to start band camp day one with facial run through stuff. It's a little overwhelming and they have no connection to the show yet. Something else I want to add to that is, as you're playing music and you're discussing words and you're sharing with them what the communication, what the emotion is, make sure they know what the story of your marching band show is. Make sure you know. If it's a storyline, a story arc, what is happening in each scene? What emotion are you guys trying to create? If your show is based around a concept, what emotion are you portraying for each concept? Now, concepts are a little bit harder than storylines, right? If you're doing Romeo and Juliet, that's a little bit easier to communicate to the audience than the jagged line. You know, was that what Blue Coats did? Jagged line? Like, what does that even mean? So they, you know, I'm sure they've had to do a lot of discussing about what emotions they were creating. If your show is based on a piece of artwork or a person in history, or you just make sure you share information with your kids about the theme so that they connect with it better, and then they can communicate that connection to the audience. So that's a really important part. My favorite thing about facial run-throughs is that once you get it and you get that, the silliness out of it, is that they're perfect for bus rides. So if you're, which who knows if we'll be on a bus this fall, right? Anybody? So if you're riding a bus to your band competition and you're like 5 minutes away from the show site or 10 minutes away, you're like, okay, everyone get quiet, get settled. We're turning on the show music. We're going to do a facial run through. So here is the culmination of it all. The goal is to be able to play your show and have them sit there. They can air work, right? But no equipment, no body, just thinking about the show and just do their faces. And it's crazy. It's such a long time and it's so hard to maintain that. And you're like, see, that's why on the field, you'll smile for 5 counts. And then when you got to throw your quad, you stop smiling. And then when you're running over here, you're thinking about your drill move, so you're not smiling. So it kind of builds that facial stamina, or at least the ability to be thinking about it for the whole 6 to 10 minutes of your show. Okay. Well, I'm glad, Lexi, that you had conversations about Pablo Picasso, right? There's a lot of groups that put shows out and they literally don't tell their kids anything. They're like, oh, we're doing a show about Picasso. Ready, go. And so it's just so important to communicate with them what the show is about. All right. So that is the facial run through. It's hard, but it's worth the effort if you're trying to develop and teach intentionally what this is doing instead of just this, right? That it is choreography on its own, right? That coincides with the choreography they're doing with their bodies and their equipment. All right, let me finish this up and then I'm going to open it up to you. Goodness gracious. Sorry, I'm being dumb right now. I'm so cringy when it comes to like technology. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, here we go. Share. And let's get back to this. All right. So just a few more notes on the facial run through. I think I said a lot of this. The end goal is to do the whole show and have just facials. It's very challenging. You can include facial warm-ups, you know, like having them rub their face muscles, having them make like vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U, raising their eyebrows up and down. So they understand that these muscles need to be moving just as much as these muscles do. This is a great activity for the bus ride. If your show tells a story, make sure they know it. I've said all of this already. The more your students learn about what their show is about, the more they can connect with it and be able to communicate it to others. We can't expect them to communicate to the audience if they have no idea what their show is about. So I can't say that enough. And then here's my story and my picture. This is my son. Isn't this exciting? So this was the year our show was Romeo and Juliet in a fish tank. And it was the first year we took their helmets off, their shakos off, and we tried to train the band kids in performing as well. Because, you know, that's the way our activity is going, that the guard is no longer the only group responsible for communicating. We are now asking hornline members to do it as well. But my son is he's pretty typical, you know, like whenever I tell him to do something, it's like, mom, whatever. And so here I am trying to teach the hornline how to be performers and look up and, you know, and when I saw this action shot, I was like, oh my gosh, my son is listening. Because see, chins up, looking at the audience. Now these kids, not so much, but we're working on it. It's a process. And, you know, last year, Avon, we did our Unbroken show and we had way more kids on board being great performers. And so, like I told you at the beginning, it is a process. Okay, taking performing to the next level. The ownership of it. So at the beginning, it's going to feel really forced, you know, make your face do this. Now try this. Now let's listen to the music and move our faces. It feels very forced. But again, the process over time is for them to take ownership of it, for there to be a culture of performing in the group. And when it comes from them, like when they're like, hey guys, smile to each other, or you have a group of upperclassmen that come to practice every day smiling, and that makes the underclassmen, then they're like, oh, well, look at them, they're smiling, I guess I'll do that too. Well, of course, like it's going to mean so much more. But at first, it's going to feel forced. Another great way to build on performing is improvisational activities and theater games. And I'm sorry, we don't have these this week for you guys, but if you Google improvisational activities and theater games, there is a mother load of information out there. If you take 15 minutes during band camp on a Friday, you know, or at the end of the night, your last 15 minutes, you do some kind of improvisational thing or theater game, which of course, if you don't do these yet, they're going to be silly about it at first, but once you make it a part of your program, they become better and better at it. But that's, I mean, performing is acting for a lot of us until it becomes internalized and you just feel the music and like want to share it. But until then, you're an actor. So theater games are a great way to break kids out of their shells. And then look at those performers. Love it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'm going to see if you guys have any other questions, and then I would love to hear your ideas. What do you do to help your kids become better performers? Because I don't have all the answers. And trust me, if you came to see our guard, like not everyone performs still. I mean, even though we have a great culture, there's always those couple of kids that just either don't want to or don't know how yet or just aren't comfortable. So I would love any advice or activities that you have that you could share. And if you do, feel free to unmute yourself and just go for it. And if you have questions, you can type them in chat too.
For me, I'm still marching while also being an instructor. So I like to use like my own action shots because I can show the kids like I have bad performance days. There's pictures of me not performing and like I don't like that. So like how would you feel if there's action shots of you not performing? Mm-hmm. Like you want those really good action shots. So I'll show them like action shots of me where I'm like, these are my favorite and these are my least favorite. And it's not because like what I'm doing with the equipment, it's because my face, like I stopped performing. And it's like, so they can look at me and be like, oh, like, because instead of me being like, oh, I know how to perform, I'm better, that like I can perform all this, they're like, oh, it's something that like she still struggles with. So it's not like I'm bad because I can't perform. It's something that like I'm someone who can't perform in rehearsal. I will not perform in rehearsal and turn it on at shows. And my instructors are so confused by it because most people, when they turn it on at shows, they like fall apart. And I'm just like, I still struggle with it because it's like being up close to my staff. I'm like, I don't like performing. It makes me feel uncomfortable, but performing for a crowd of people I can't them in, I'm like, great, I can do this. So it's hard for me to like teach my students to perform at rehearsal because I understand that like feeling awkward. So it's like something I still struggle with as an instructor and as a member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't really harp on that enough either. But yeah, it is so hard to maintain that performance stamina during rehearsals because you're right, your instructors are in your face, you're repping it over and over again. It's harder to, and you're not in your super suit with your hair and makeup, like that all brings out so much more. But and that's amazing that you can turn it on at a show and not fall apart, because typically if you're developing your muscle memory at rehearsal and your muscle memory does not involve this, and then suddenly it does at a show, and then it triggers like your body's like, what are you doing? You're not doing what we practiced, and then you fall apart. So yeah, just as an instructor, as I'm sure most of us, when we're at rehearsals, we want things to be clean, right? So that's what we're watching, clean. And sometimes we just forget to even mention, don't forget to perform, or make sure your chins are up here, or what's your face doing here, or, hey, that was a great performance. Can we try to do more of that? Sometimes we're just so hung up on what the equipment's doing as instructors, we forget to remind them to perform. All right, I've got some questions here. A good way to convey sadness. Sadness is a tricky one, isn't it? Because people have different limits for what they want to watch with sadness. Like, I'm sure you all have seen those Winter Guard shows where like the kids are basically sobbing on the floor and you're just like, oh my gosh. And it gets you, but then sometimes it's too much. Like, you got to find the right balance. But for sadness, typically for me, and by the way, your eyebrows are the most expressive thing on your face. So when your kids do their makeup, make sure that the eyebrows are seen. If your kids have light eyebrows, they need to darken them because these are huge. Okay, but with sadness, what I always talk about is that raising of the eyebrows and kind of pulling them in, right? This, and then the turning down of the mouth. And then you can also have an open mouth with sadness, like, right? And then you can also lift them up, right? Settling into your sadness. Lots of sighing. Like when you write your choreography, if you're trying to convey sadness, there needs to be a lot of breath, where happiness is more an inflated thing, sadness is more deflated. So a lot of your choreography should feel kind of like that, heavy. And if you write your choreography, a lot of the performance quality also lands on your shoulders too. If you went to Shannon's session today about adding lower body, like your body and your choreography should help convey the emotion as well. So it all kind of works together. So sadness, definitely downturned mouth or an open, like breathing through your mouth kind of a thing. And then the eyebrows are huge, right? The pinched and lifted, or the all the way up. Eyebrows are huge. I hope that helped you a little bit. We got lots of questions. How would you suggest teaching performance in a negative or not completely positive environment? Woo! Are you the director or are you working within an environment created by someone else? My interview with Omari today was so great because he reminded me that positive encouragement is way more effective than negative when it comes to performing specifically. If you're just yelling at you, you're not performing, you don't care, nobody wants to watch that, versus, you really nailed your quad just then. What would make it even better is if you would have like lifted your chin up and smiled on that moment, like taking positive things and then just trying to slowly build those moments onto it, when you're in a negative environment, the only thing you can do is take those baby steps to change it, to create a positive environment. Lots of positive reinforcement, lots of praise. Even if little Sally's been running around there with no performance face, and then one rep, you see her like smile on count 8, and you're like, oh my gosh, Sally, your count 8 was so great. That smile made you look so much better. Can you try it now? Counts 1 through 16. Just being as positive you can yourself. I hope that helped. I sometimes get a little silly and also show them how I look when I perform so they don't have to feel worried about what others think. I go through the emotions with them to show everyone does it. We all went through it, as a student and instructor. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on that, Katie, because yes, modeling it is huge. So if you're not comfortable performing yourself, you might want to, check yourself as well. Put yourself out there if you're asking your kids to do it. Modeling the right version and the wrong version, right? We call them non-examples. I think that's powerful too. So if you do the choreography and don't perform and show them, hey, watch this, now watch this. What would you rather watch? What looks better? What was I doing? So they can see those non-examples too. My coach tells us to say that we all need to and not to call each other out, that we're all one. Yeah, different programs have different synergies amongst their kids. Like some programs, there's a culture there where the kids can call out other kids, and some don't. But I like that thought that you're all together, right? So if Captain Hannah, is like, you guys need to perform. I'm performing and you're, that's not a very good culture to have. But if she's like, come on, guys, we can do it. It's just going to be a much better culture. That's a good sentiment, Lexi, because you guys are all a team. All right. Anybody else have anything to add or any questions?
Hey, Susie, this is Whitney. I have something
Whitney.
I can add.
Sure.
Performance was a huge piece for both of my programs that I run last year. And for one of them in particular, we did a protest show. So that was massive on the emotions that we had to portray through them. Mm-hmm. So what I started with, I think I learned the improv part at CGIA last year, is I put them in a circle and faced them outwards. And we physically went through, when you're angry, what do you do with your face? What do you do with your eyebrows? What do you do with the back of your jaw? And do you grit your teeth? So I physically took them through that. And then I would, quickly make them switch their emotions. And then they would also use their levels. So they could crouch down or they could get really tall or things like that, And then once they were comfy, I faced it in circle and they did it to the person across the circle from them. And then from there, I took it into my across the floors. And essentially I gave them an improv across the floor and I chose a piece of music and I said, this is your emotion for this across the floor. And then they could improv. So if they were getting really angry and protesting and they were, angry marching or something, they could do that across the floor with their emotion on it. And then I would also tell them which direction they're performing in so they know where they have to go or look, essentially. And those two things greatly helped our performance last year. So we started it there and then eventually it merged into my rehearsals on the field. And I think that's another thing I think we sometimes forget is the field is our theater, essentially. Like if we're talking marching season, it has to be 10 times bigger than what you think. So those were huge aspects that we did. And I did before videos and after videos, and they saw the difference. And I think that helped a lot. So
oh my goodness.
It helped. One of my programs did really well with it last year. So just so you know.
So much good content in there. I love the idea of doing the improv across the floor. Hold on a minute. So you can go back to eating without me focusing. The improv across the floor is great next step, right? To apply the facials, and it's incorporating an improvisational activity, which some kids will love and some will hate, right? But if you keep doing them, right? You put on that music, you say, move your body across the floor, use some of the dance technology we have or terminology we have, but use that emotion. You're performing this way, all that. Great. I love that idea. All right, Theo, coming to you. You got some suggestions?
Yes. Yes. I have two. I think one person said the kind of to make I fortunately have built and have a really good positive culture in my guard that allows me to allow the students to critique each other and whatnot. And so what I do is I will split the guard in half sometimes, and I will give the people who are watching a specific person to watch for that rep or for whatever. And sometimes I'll actually make them record their faces only. So they'll all go get their phones, they all have them, get their phones and just record that person's from here up and just try to record them as they're doing their standstill run through or whatever section we're on the show. But the quicker version is just to watch that person do a chunk of the show or a chunk of whatever we're doing. And then at the end, the people who are performing don't know who's watching them. So they have no choice but to perform all across the front of the gym. Because I don't know who's watching them. And so at the end, I say, okay, go to your person and tell them some good things and some things they can improve on and blah, blah, blah. I'm lucky enough to have that culture to where it's not like a thing, but it's always really fun for them because it's just fun for the people performing because they have to perform now, and the people who are watching, it gives them a chance to cheat and take down oh, she looks good doing this sound and things like that. And I also try to make it fun to where I don't put weapons with weapons and flags with flags and dancers with dancers. It's dancer, you watch this weapon line because you don't really know what they do. They may show you something different and how they use their body with their equipment, vice versa, weapon to a dance member. That's always fun. And then we switch. And then the fun thing when we switch is that I don't give them the same person. And so they think they're going to watch the person that watched them, and it's not. It's always someone else. So they think they have it figured out, but they don't. But that's always really fun. And that's something that's fun, mid to the end of the season, it's like more of like an accountability thing. Like, hey, are we all still doing it still? Like, are we all still committing to the same part of the show? And that's really fun.
Okay, before you
And
go to your
another
next
thing,
one, can I piggyback on that real quick?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I love that. Like, I'm so glad you guys are saying these things because this is all amazing. The peer-to-peer performing piece. I'm just thinking about Cheer. Is that on Netflix, Cheer?
Yeah.
With Jerry. You guys know about Jerry, who is
Yeah.
the member of the cheerleading squad, like who is the best at cheering on his teammates. And I'm picturing your kids performing for each other. And yes, they're watching, but you know, maybe you have those performances where you don't put anything on paper and they just go nuts for each other, you know, screaming out for things that are, you know, just all that energy. That love it. All right, what else you got?
I do technique games. This usually happens like mid early-ish season, like maybe August, September land, where we take, you know, our body warm-up or our flag technique or our weapon technique or across the floors. I put them on paper, I put them in a basket, and then another basket I put the emotions that we will be using in the show. And then I put them in groups, of course. And so they always get like one person comes, they take one technique, it says, oh, okay, draw spins with body. And then they have to pick an emotion, and it's like, it's our ballad. So it's like, you know, whatever it's going to be, sadness, blah, blah. And they have to perform, that group has to perform that skill set with that emotion, which they would never really normally do. Like in the beginning stage, you say, okay, we're going to learn these 16 draw spins and try and do this emotion on the small level, but on the bigger level, we try and do like the whole 2-minute, 3-minute routine of draw spins with body, with a set of motions they're going to use anyway. And that's kind of fun because it takes like the pressure of it being a requirement and makes it like a game, and kids love games. And so like they get to draw and they're like, oh my God, I got anger and I got pole hits, and they think it's hilarious. And they're able to connect like something that they probably aren't comfortable with something they are comfortable with. And it makes it connect. And it's also just, for them, it's fun for them. For me, it's like, oh, I have no idea how much you're learning right now. So keep having fun. I don't care. But that's always, if you can, it's like hiding the pill in the bologna for your dog. It's very much that. They don't know they're taking medicine, but they're just having fun. Very much that. But that's I've had a lot of success with that one.
I love it. Great ideas. And then Amanda, I want to point out what you said in chat. If you don't have that culture yet where kids can critique each other, that you start with positive, right? Where so they perform for each other and you watch someone and you find good things to say about them. And then you can build into that where they're able to critique each other. So yeah, that's great advice. Love it. Thank you, Theo. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay. Oh my gosh, so many good things. Like I wish I could go to a guard practice right now. I miss it so much. Have any of you guys been able to like get with your kids? I mean, we've only been Zooming.
I started last week.
You got to see them face to face?
Yeah, so the school district said it. I get to see them for 90 minutes, only 3 days a week. They set my days and times. So I'm leaving right after this to go. So, but it's real. The kids miss it. They're going to be so excited to go back. They were last week. They were bouncing off the walls. My first rehearsal was not productive, but it was a lot of fun. They're just excited to be back together and out of the house, I think. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I think we get to see ours in July too, Katie. All right. Well, you guys, I hope this was helpful and gave you some ideas. I don't want to stress you out and make you feel like you need to develop great performers in the next 3 months. It is a process. So start small, take baby steps, start developing the culture that it's an expectation in your guard. And I wish you the best of luck with it. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you're not on our CGIA, Color Guard Instructor Academy Facebook page, you need to get there. Just search CGIA or Color Guard Instructor Academy Music for All and ask to join. If you just would answer the questions, you could even just say, you told me to join. Because if you don't answer the questions, I'm not letting you in, just so you know. But it's a great community because you can ask questions about anything all year round. And you won't just hear from me, you'll hear from wonderful people like shared today, instructors from around the country. So we hope you join us. And thank you guys again for coming. And Theo, thanks for reaching out about making sure we have content this week. I'm glad we could make it happen. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.